Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever walked down a school hallway and noticed how one classroom is pin drop silent while the next one over looks like, well, beautifully organized chaos? Today, we're jumping straight into the fascinating ecosystem of early childhood education. We're going to look at three absolute heavyweights in the pedagogical world: the Reggio Emilia approach, the Montessori method, and the International Baccalaureate Primary Years Program, or, the IBPYP. We'll explore exactly how these distinct philosophies overlap, where they fundamentally clash, and how pulling ideas from Montessori and Reggio can actually supercharge your PYP practice. Let's just dive right in. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, the big 3 approaches, then move to 2, shared educational foundations. Next is 3, divergent paths and philosophies, followed by 4, supporting PYP practice. Then 5, navigating potential conflicts. And we'll wrap up with 6, the blended classroom future. All right, Section 1, the big 3 approaches. Meet the pioneers of early childhood education. Okay, to really understand these frameworks, we need to quickly look at where they came from. Picture this. Over a century ago, Dr. Maria Montessori, who was actually a scientist and physician, started viewing the classroom as a literal laboratory for human potential. She was giving these highly precise lessons on things like geometrical insets. It was very methodical, very scientific for the early 1900s. Now contrast that with the Reggio Emilia movement. That was born right out of the devastation of World War II, founded by Loris Malagazzi and a group of local parents. They built a movement grounded in democratic community and the expressive arts. And that brings us to today, to the IBPYP, which is this modern, globally focused framework designed to shape internationally minded citizens. So we're talking about 3 totally distinct origins from 3 very different eras. Moving on to Section 2, shared educational foundations, the climate of inquiry and agency. Even though these systems were born decades apart, they share some incredibly powerful common ground. I want to anchor us with this quote from Maria Montessori. She said, "Education must take as its aim the development of these hidden possibilities." I just love that phrase, hidden possibilities. It totally hits the nail on the head for what all 3 of these models believe. None of them, absolutely none, view the child as some empty vessel waiting for an adult to pour facts into them. Instead, they all agree that the child is already highly capable, totally competent, and just bursting with natural curiosity. So when we look at Montessori's planes of development, Reggio's image of the competent child, and the PYP's overarching framework, they actually intersect beautifully. They all champion student agency, really trusting that kids can construct their own knowledge. They all agree that inquiry is just a natural human process, not something we have to force. They also view play as an absolutely vital vehicle for deep exploration. And crucially, they share a profound respect for the physical environment. They see the classroom itself as an actual catalyst for learning, not just a room where learning happens. Now for Section 3, divergent paths and philosophies, where the ecosystems branch out. Okay, so if they agree on the foundational stuff, where do things branch out? Well, the biggest point of divergence is curriculum structure. Reggio Emilia is entirely emergent. It's totally flexible, there are no strict timelines, and the learning evolves organically based on whatever the kids happen to be fascinated by that morning. They even bring in an atelierista, basically a resident artist, to help kids explore what they call their 100 languages, which just means the countless ways kids express themselves, whether that's painting, sculpting, or acting. On the flip side, the IBPYP pivots to a much more structured framework. Yes, it absolutely values inquiry, but it operates within pre-planned transdisciplinary themes that target very specific, globally recognized learning outcomes. This split extends right into how they set up the physical room. Montessori meticulously curates what she famously called the prepared environment. It is packed with specific, didactic materials designed for auto-education. Think of puzzle pieces that literally only fit together if the child gets the right answer. It allows for immediate self-correction, so everything has an exact place and purpose to build independence. Reggio Emilia goes down a totally different path. They treat the environment itself as the third teacher. Their spaces are organic, usually flooded with natural light, highly aesthetic, and filled with loose, open-ended materials meant to provoke collaborative artistic exploration. Let's jump to Section 4, supporting PYP practice. Cross-pollinating ideas for 2025? So, you might be wondering, why does all this history matter for modern schools?
Well, because bringing in these older models can actually elevate your IB/PYP practice, especially when we look at the brand new 2025 curriculum updates. Let's do a little cross-pollination. The 2025 PYP introduces inquiry learning progressions, or ILPs, mapping skill development over time instead of just strictly by age. Now think about Montessori's historical focus on independent, continuous developmental pacing. It completely nourishes this new PYP update, right? Also, the PYP's refreshed transdisciplinary themes can be totally supercharged by Reggio's emergent deep project-based learning. And as the PYP rolls out unified subject guides, Reggio's rich tradition of making learning highly visible through artistic documentation can really help teachers track that messy, complex process of student inquiry.
Blending these practices brings some real, tangible benefits to your classroom. First off, it fosters much deeper student agency and personalized learning. It also shifts our focus away from just slapping a grade on a final product, placing the value firmly back on the learning process itself. By utilizing Reggio's rich, non-standardized documentation and tapping into those 100 languages we talked about, you're giving students incredibly diverse ways to communicate what they know. And honestly, this is exactly what they need for big milestones like the PYP exhibition, where the whole point is for students to showcase their learning journey rather than just acing a final test. It really rethinks the classroom as an engaging third teacher.
But wait a second. We have to pause here and ask a very practical, real-world question. What actually happens when free-flowing, boundless inquiry slams into the reality of time-bound school assessments?
Which brings us to Section 5, Navigating Potential Conflicts, Friction in the Educational Ecosystem. Look, it's not all seamless integration. We need to talk about the friction. A massive point of tension is time management. The IBPYP is, by design, time-bound. You've got specific units of inquiry that literally have to be completed within a set time frame, complete with formal formatives, summatives, and the exhibition. Reggio Emilia? Not so much. They operate on completely open-ended timelines. A project about shadows in a Reggio classroom might last a few days, or it could snowball into a massive 3-month obsession, depending entirely on what the kids want to do. Trying to balance that deep, organic inquiry with a strict, standard school calendar? Yeah, that is a huge headache for educators. Then there's the role of the teacher. In the PYP framework, you are essentially a structured guide. Your job is to make sure students actually hit those predetermined learning outcomes. With the Reggio approach, it asks you to step back, to act as a spontaneous co-learner, and basically just follow the trial's natural direction. Navigating this dual identity, trying to be a wandering co-learner while still making absolutely sure everyone passes their summatives, it's basically an everyday tightrope walk for teachers.
Let's wrap up with Section 6, the blended classroom future, balancing freedom and structure.
Okay, so how do we successfully merge these powerful approaches without losing our minds? Let's build a practical strategy. Step 1. Always anchor in those shared foundational values. Start with the unwavering belief that the child is highly capable. Step 2. Start cross-pollinating. Try bringing in Reggio's beautiful documentation alongside Montessori's independent pacing and self-correcting materials. Step 3. Use the PYP as your master framework. Guide all of this incredible organic learning using the PYP's structured transdisciplinary themes and those new 2025 inquiry progressions. When you strike that balance, you create the ultimate hybrid model. Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. We've talked a ton about student agency today, but can true, unbridled student agency ever actually exist within a standardized global framework? Think about it. When the learning outcomes are completely predetermined before a child even walks into the room, just how free is the inquiry? It's a fascinating tension to consider as you design your own spaces. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that question for your own classroom. See you next time.